All right, in this video, I wanted to talk more about common law to better help people understand the situation. Because I see a lot of times people say things like taxation is theft and complain about the government and some of the stupid laws that are federal laws and state laws, and they piss and moan about the stuff. And I just think it's weird because I'll talk to them about how you're not subject to those if you don't want to be. You are submitting to these things. And they either think I'm crazy, they don't care, or, like a lot of people, they don't want solutions, they just want to complain, right? But anyway, what I have here before you is how things are established as God creates mankind, which is made up of man and woman, and everyone becomes a king and priest. I'm not saying that men are the kings and women are the priests. I'm just putting it on either side here. And this basically means that everyone is equal. We have sovereignty over ourselves, and we can all come to God, our Creator, our Father, right? Our God. And we can have a personal relationship with Him, right? So we can follow our own conscience. We don't have to follow the conscience of some other man or woman or group of men and or women, right? We are free. And America was originally set up in this way following common law, which was established in England when they got the King James Bible, the King James Version. They established common law based off of Christian values, which was everybody is equal. We're all made in the image and likeness of God. No one can rule over anyone else. And this basically means that a phrase that you probably heard in America, and that is that your freedom ends where, my face begins. Basically saying that, you can swing your fists around all you want because you're free to do so. But as soon as it hits my face, there's a problem, right? So you're free as long as what you are doing does not harm anybody else. And this is why you got free speech, because you can say whatever you want because it doesn't actually hurt anybody. It doesn't cause any damage. But when you say certain things, like you threaten somebody, they have a right to prepare to defend themselves. And they could perceive you as a threat. So if you say you're going to hurt somebody or end their life, and then you start walking towards them, they have every right to draw a weapon and attack you to protect themselves from what you're about to do. Even if you didn't mean what you said, they don't know that, right? If you said that and you didn't mean it, you shouldn't have said it, right? And this is how the government was originally established, as a servant to man. And that's why I want to change the colors here, because mankind has been given the power to create, and mankind creates government, right? Now you notice how God created man, so man is under God and subject to God, right? And man was created first, then the woman, and that's why the woman is subject to man, right? And since government was created by mankind, a man and a woman, the government is subject to men and women, right? But you might realize that that's not how it is. But it is how it is. You just don't realize that you have subjected yourself to this willingly. Because you see, under common law, we're all equal, unless you make an agreement, such as God makes a covenant with mankind, such as I'm not going to destroy the world with a flood again, a flood of water anyway, right? And he makes a covenant with Israel. And then he makes a covenant with anyone and everyone that will come to the cross and give up their life and accept death through Jesus Christ, that they may have Jesus' life in exchange for theirs. He'll make a covenant with them as well. Right? These are contracts. These are agreements. Just as a man and a woman coming together in marriage is contractual. Right? As the Bible talks about, they own each other's body because they are to be one. Right? So, the government over here, though, it has changed things, right? So now the government creates a new term where it's not man, it's human. And hue is a color of man. And that's why the government would say that there is black and white. And this is not the color of skin. When the government talks about a black man or a black woman and a white man or a white woman, it's not talking about the color of their skin. Since you can look at people that are referred to as black, some of them are black skin, but some of them are dark brown or brownish, a tannish, a copperish, right? It's not in a reference to the color of their skin. Just like most white people are not actually that pale white. It's more peach looking, maybe even a reddish, little tannish, right? Not quite white, right? But you see, the government creates this. God didn't create black and white men. He created man. Man may have different color skins, but they're all man, right? Well, the government says there's black ones and there are white ones. And what this actually is a status. So it doesn't matter the color of your skin. You should never refer to yourself as black, and you should always refer to yourself as white. This is not racist. Because in the government, if you are black, you could have pale white skin, but if you are referred to as a black man or a black woman, it means you are a slave. So like I said, it doesn't have to do with the color of your skin. So if you're saying I'm a black man because you're thinking of the color of your skin, you're saying I'm a slave because you don't know legalese, which is a language different from English that sounds like English, but it's not. It doesn't. The words don't mean the same thing. Like with the Catholic Church, when they say, oh yeah, we believe we're saved by grace through faith, those words that they're using don't mean the same thing to them as it means to you, because they're speaking a different language. They put different definitions to those words, right? Where you say, oh, I'm saved by grace through faith. In other words, the only thing that comes from me is faith, believing and trusting God in His grace, His unmerited, undeserved favor that He's given me as a free gift. The only way I can receive His grace is by faith, because I can't earn it or deserve it. I can't pay for it, right? But with the Catholic, they're like, oh, by faith, you receive God's grace, which is the power to do works in order to get saved. But if you don't do the works with the grace, you're not going to be saved. So it doesn't mean the same thing it means to you, as the Bible clearly states out about what grace is and what faith is. They change it to mean what they want it to mean, to fit their beliefs. Which ties into in all of this, because the law that we're talking about here from the government is actually Roman Admiralty law, which makes sense as the Catholic Church changes the meaning of words to make it sound like it's saying the same thing you are when it's not. But you see, it's causing confusion, right? It's speaking with a forked tongue from the very beginning, with the serpent, with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And this is a tactic narcissists used, is to cause confusion because it disrupts the mind and allows them to manipulate it and basically do different forms of hypnosis. That's why they will interrupt you in a train of thought. One of the reasons why I don't like debates, because you're not allowed to talk like this. Somebody's always going to interrupt or ignore what you have to say. But here, you just say what you got to say, and the people who want to hear it, and the people who don't. And that's that. Simple, easy, right? Don't have to deal with the nonsense of the games people like to play. But if you're referred to as white here, coming back to all this, this means you are free. So you could have the blackest skin that any person has ever had, and you refer to yourself as white because you are free. So even if you have the darkest skin ever, you should say that you are white. If you're going to be playing this government game, right? Because they created the human. Hue is just different colors, shades of man, right? God didn't create human, he created man. Right? He created the male and female, and he called them man or Adam, right? God called both the man and the woman man, Adam, right? God didn't create humans. Human is a creation of the government, right? And that's what they want you focused on, is the color of your skin, because then you won't refer to yourself as white. And that's why you think, oh, white privilege has to do with the color of your skin. No, it's because that's where we think. If the government were to ask if you were black or white, and you don't say white, what do you think you're telling them? You're not free. So that means you're subject to them. Because humans, shades of human, are under the government. The government created them. So if you want to say that you are, we'll pass by white. Let's say you want to call yourself peach colored, or you want to call yourself tan, red, light brown, brown, dark brown. We'll throw in yellow in there, or black. Well, then you are a type of human. You're not part of mankind, because mankind is not a coloring box of crayons, right? So if you're going to get caught up in that, you're playing the government game. And that's why when you talk to these police officers and you say certain things, well then, their mindset and what they're taught is ignorance of the law is no excuse. So if you don't know this here, and then you agree to what they said, such as, do you understand me? And you say yes, well then that means just like man is under God, and God can judge us and do what he wants with us, if you say you understand that police officer, you're standing under them as you stand under God, which means that police officer can do whatever he wants to you and get away with it. And that's why when they go to court, you're like, why do these police officers get away with arresting people for no crime, or beating them, or molesting, raping them, and killing them, and they don't go to jail for it? It's because you don't know the law, and these people agreed to it. Because as soon as they say something as simple as, do you understand me? You say yes. Or they say, I'm going to arrest you, and you say okay. You verbally agreed to it, because here, under common law, they can't do anything unless you agree to it, because you're your own sovereign king and priest. All right? So they get you under the government by agreeing to be something that you actually aren't, being their creation. For example, if a police officer asks for an ID or a driver's license, right? The ID and driver's license is a creation of the government. They own it, right? So then they say, is this you? And you say, yes. You are saying you are the ID card, the driver's license that the police officer is looking at and holding. And that's property of the government. So now you're at the whim of that police officer. They can do what they want to you because he's a policy officer. You see the policy of the government, right? And when you see on the police cars and government vehicles and buildings, it's all capital letters because it's not English. You notice how here I put a capital for the first letter and then lowercase the rest of it? Because that's English. Right? All capitals is Pig Latin or legalese. It's not English, so it doesn't mean what you think it means. And this is another thing that tie into here. There's a difference between auto and a vehicle. Because you see, a vehicle is a creation of the government. It's subject to them. It's a vessel used for commerce, which is under the jurisdiction of the government. So if you are driving a vehicle, and again, driving is a term used for commerce, then you're under the jurisdiction of the government. Because you may think, well, how are they able to restrict my freedom to travel? Well, because you're not traveling, you're driving. You know, like a truck driver is driving products over the nation. He is subject to different laws and rules, right? Because he's doing commerce. Because he's driving. He's not traveling, right? So when you tell the police officer you're driving a vehicle, well, you need a license to drive a vehicle because you're doing commerce. That's what you're telling the police officer, right? And then when you got the license plates, that means you registered the car to the state, which means you don't own it. You have the right to use it. It means it's owned by the state, and you're the only one that has the right to use it, which means they can take it anytime they want, and you agreed to it. So if you got the license plates on it, and then you say you're driving a vehicle, well, you're under their jurisdiction. You have to obey their rules. Right? And if you say you are actually traveling in an automobile and you don't have license plates, they have no jurisdiction over you. Because now they're restricting your freedom to travel. Because an automobile has to do with being autonomous. Where you got autograph, right? It means that you are basically sovereign and free and independent. So if you got an automobile, that is something you use to travel in. You're not doing commerce. You follow? That's why you got to know the English language and understand that the government speaks legalese or Pig Latin. The words they are using are not the same. They don't mean the same thing. Such as I bring up a lot. When they say, do you understand? They're not asking you, do you comprehend what I'm saying? They're asking if you understand. That's why when you talk to a police officer, if you go to court and they ask if you understand, if you say no, they can't proceed because you're not agreeing to submit to the jurisdiction of the police officer or of the government. Now and then, you're going to have police officers that act boneheaded and don't know the law, and then you can file claim against them if they did anything stupid because they infringed on your freedom, on your God-given rights. And you could, like, let's say a cop arrested you for no reason, only because you didn't submit to them, right? They're having a bad day and they want to take it out on you. But you don't have an ID and you didn't agree to anything. Well, now you can bill them as much as you want. Not the police station, the actual man or men and or women that arrested you. Like, they detained me. I'm charging them $10,000 for that. They took all my day, and sometimes you're in jail for more than a day. I'm charging them $50,000 a day for being captive. And then I'm going to charge them an extra $100,000 for actually all the stress. Right? You can make up the bills for whatever you want. Bill them $1 million. Right? And that's what they're liable to pay. Because they have no right to do that to you. Because you're free. If you choose to be. But you see, the problem is, let's change the color here. Yeah, well, I'll use yellow. Yeah, I feel like using red. No, never mind, I'll go stick to yellow. You see how man created government, right? But then man puts himself under the government. You know what that is? That's idolatry. You're putting the government in place of God, and now you, instead of praying to God, relying on God, trusting in God, what are you doing? You're doing that to the government, except you call it pleading, petitioning, protesting, instead of praying, right? Voting instead of asking God, right? You, instead of going to God, you go to the government. So in other words, you have yourself an idol. That's idolatry. That's why I say that even atheists are religious and have a god or gods, because they too submit to the idol of government. All right? So if you're going to sit there and complain about taxes and freedom and this and that and the other thing, well, you can be free. The door is open. You can walk out of the cage anytime you want. It's not even locked. You're there because you don't actually truly want to be free for whatever reason. Just like Israel didn't want to be free when they left Egypt. Because you don't want to take responsibility. You don't know how to take responsibility. You don't want to govern yourself. It's just like Israel when it came to God giving the covenant with them. And he was speaking to them and they said, speak through Moses. We don't want to go directly to God. So basically they were saying we want government instead of a personal relationship with God. That's why later on they wanted a king instead of having God as their king. They were like, let's get us a king to be like the Gentiles, like the rest of the world. Right? So instead of them all being equal, they have somebody set up above them and they got a hierarchy, which God did not want. It's like the deeds and doctrines of the Nicolaitans there. And he told them it wasn't going to end well, and it didn't. Because they basically created an idol. Now we're committing spiritual adultery on God. right? And then you see this with the Christians as well. Well, they set up the hierarchy with Catholicism and their priesthood that they call the magisterium, where the magisterium actually has to do with government and not the church, but that's what they call their priesthood. That should be a sign right there, but nope, goes over so many people's heads in one ear and out the other. Same thing with the Orthodox, and the Protestants pretty much are no different, especially these days. They're not even Protestants anymore. The name Protestant came from protesting the Roman Catholic Church, and they don't do that. Matter of fact, most Protestants would say that the Catholics are our brothers and sisters in Christ, which just shows how far gone they are, that they're basically just Catholics now, just a different sect, branch off, or rite of Catholicism now. Right? You even have some priests say that the Reformation is over, or the Counter-Reformation is done, because it pretty much is. Where we had this free country, they've basically created a tumor where we were under this common law here, and then they created this giant tumor here where you have Washington, D.C., the capital, and where is it? Right there between Virginia and Maryland, the Virgin Mary, right? So you see that they put a child in the Virgin Mary, Washington, D.C., to rule the nation, right? To usurp the place of America, where Washington, D.C. only has jurisdiction over that land of Washington, D.C. It doesn't actually have jurisdiction over anyone else unless you submit to it. And people all plug into the system with their birth certificates, social security numbers, and such to play that game because it gives you some benefits. But then they piss and moan about it. No one cares what the slaves piss and moan about. They only put up with it enough and give into it enough to keep everybody docile. But they know ultimately you're not going to do anything because that's why they sit there and tell you about the Epstein files, because they're like, what are you going to do about it? You are petty slaves that can't live without the government. So what are you going to do? You're going to overthrow it? No, you're not. You're just going to piss and moan about it. And you're going to cry about it. And you're just going to deal with it because you're neutered. You're cuckolds. And that's what feminine men do. You just take it. You don't even have to fight, as in a physical fight, because our fight is not against flesh and blood. You can just unplug from the system. Super easy. Other than you might have to deal with relying on God, so you might deal with some trust issues and some anxiety and not knowing how you're going to do anything. But you can take the steps now to build that relationship with God, ask Him to help you, and learn these things. And there you go. And then when you learn these things, you can realize that you can use the system and not be subject to it. So you can still take an ID, for example, and use it to get the benefits, but then realize that I am not that person. That's just a card I use to play the game, but I don't want to play the game now, so that's not me. And then you're free from the jurisdiction, right? That simple, that easy. No fighting, no guns, no blood and death. And again, I've learned this through personal experience, starting when I was in the military. And I went AWOL, and I had to deal with a police officer, but I didn't have ID. So even though he had a good idea of who I was, he couldn't do anything because he had no jurisdiction over me. And I didn't agree to be the person he was looking for. And I was like, That's when I was like, something's off here. Something is off here. And then dealing with the Army after my contract was up was completely different, because then I wasn't under their jurisdiction, so they had to deal with me completely differently. And were trying to get me to re-enlist so that they can play their stupid games, right? So, with all that being said, thank you for your time and attention. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.